Okay, before we move to the next section of the course and create our client and server-side sockets, I just want to give you an introduction about the structs in C, so that in the next sections that actually the file that the program that I want to create, I want it to be somehow that would be a simulation of what has been done in the different files in the C that we saw in previous lectures, like the socket.h and other things. So first I want to create a file in here using the nano. I want to say the file to be of the name mghstruct.h. I told you that before different variables or names I put the name of the mgh so that you would know that this is just my name, and the name in here would not be a mandatory name. This would be actually helpful in the rest of this lecture especially. So in here I want to create a struct. In C, when you want to create a struct, you use the struct keyword. Again, you're supposed to know how these things work. I just want to just make an example, but you should already be familiar with how structs and different arrays or other things, how they could be created in the C. So you say a struct, and the struct that I want to create, let's name it my struct. So again, we create a struct with my struct. Let's say that just for the purpose of our course, I want to create a structure which has two properties. One of them would be the address and the other one would be the port. Actually, when we get to the next lecture and we want to create our client and server side sockets, we need to just have port numbers and addresses. So this would be a good example. In here, the first one, I want to create a char pointer or car pointer with the name of, let's say, mgh address. In here, the pointer that I want to point to a string. Now in here, for the second property, for the port number, I want to create a unsigned short with the name of mgh port. So using unsigned short types, you could create integers up to 65,535. Since the port number that we want to use would be in the same range, so it's better that we use unsigned short. It uses 16 bits. So in here we have created our struct. I want to save it and exit, and now create the other file, which would be mghstruct, or let's say that just my file .c. Now in here, and we hit enter, I want to first include the stdio.h, which would be for the printf function because I want to use it, and the second one that I want to use is the same header that I just created. So I say include, and in the double quotation I say the name of mghstruct.h in here. The reason that I use double quotations is to tell the C in here, the C compiler in this case, or the preprocessor in other compilers where they are separate, I want to tell it that to search in the same directory as the myfile.c for mghstruct.h. When you say these in here, these signs, you are telling the compiler to search in the default directory. For example, you saw when you wanted to search for the socket.h, you would use this, or stu.h, you use this. But in this case, when you use double quotation, you are telling it to search in the same directory as the myfile.c is currently there. So in here, it just, the preprocessor would just copy and paste all the codes in mghstruct.h in current file. Now in here, we just say int main, and we want to create our code. So I want to create an instance of my struct. It's like when you, in other programs or the high-level programs, when you create classes and objects, you create a class and then another object. It's the same thing. Actually, the purpose of C++ and other programs that were created was that they could implement the object-oriented programming in it. But in here, the object-oriented programming is actually equivalent to struct and instances. So in the mghstruct.h, we created a struct or a structure which would be equivalent to class, and in here we create an instance which would be equivalent to an object, or at least loosely speaking. So in here a struct, and then we say the name of the struct. Let me press Ctrl Shift and T again, look at the mgh struct.h, and in here if you look, it was my struct. So I say my struct, and let's just name it A. So currently I have an instance or an object in the struct or class of my struct, and now I want to access the pointer. The pointer, if you look, is mgh address. So I want to say a.mgh address. I want it to be equal to 192.168.1.4, and also I want to access the other property, which if we look again, it's mgh port in here. So mgh port, I want it to be equal to, let's say, 4000. Now after this I just want to print them, so I say printf, which is in the stdio.h header, and then for printing strings we use the %s and the a.mgh address for the first one, and let me just cut and uncut it again, and here we say d, and this would be mgh port. Now I just save it, and let me also say return 0. We save it and Ctrl X to exit. Now we use GCC compiler, myfile.c-o, my file, and we hit enter. So we have an error in here. It says int main. Let me see the file again. So I just don't see the problem. Let me save it again. Expected this before int main. So I think the problem is in here. When we create a struct, we should put a semicolon in here. So we save it, and in here I exit again and say GCC yes, and now it has been compiled successfully. Now we execute it. The binary is my file. Now we hit enter, and you see both of them have been printed out on the screen. Now what we are going to do is that I want to do something else. In here I want to use the type def. Sometimes well, there are a lot of times that we need unsigned short type variable. What I'm going to do in here is to use type def to create an alias. So in here if we say type def and then say unsigned short, and let's say just a name of mghaddr, for example. From now on, whenever we want to create an unsigned short, we could just use mghaddr. So if I say mghaddr, it knows that this is an alias for unsigned short. So now I just save it and exit, and I compile it again in here and execute it, and yes, we have the same thing. So again, if we look in here, we have used the type def in here and also the struct to create an alias for the unsigned short, and then we use this alias to create unsigned short variables, and we use a struct to create our address. The same thing is happening in the C and socket.h, which we are going to see in the next lecture. So see you in the next lecture. Well, at there I think you would appreciate these things more, even though you might think that right now they are not as useful, but you would see in the next lecture.